This is CaneSports Inside the Lines with Gary Furman, publisher of CaneSport.com, the top authority of Miami Hurricanes football. Gary, good to talk to you again.
Hey, how you doing this week, Greg?
I'm doing good, and the Canes fans are doing good too because a win's a win. And especially over the last few years, you take any win you can get it, especially in the first game. We talked about this last week. UAB was one of the better teams in the group of five. Miami's had their share of issues with teams that they're supposed to beat. It wasn't a clean game, but we didn't expect a clean game. But the win's a win, and now comes the important game, the ACC road opener at Louisville.
You know, Greg, what I really liked was the fact that they played a real game in the opener. You know, so often you see a FAMU or a Bethune scheduled into that slot. Wagner, yeah. And I've never felt that a football program gets a whole heck of a lot out of those games. I mean, it's kind of like a dress rehearsal, but to me, if the coaches are good, you can get that done on the practice field. And what I really liked about this game was that UAB was a representative team. They could walk and chew gum. And I thought they tested Miami a little bit in certain areas, and they certainly made them respond in the third quarter when they pulled to within a field goal. And Miami did respond, and they responded in a big-time way. And I think that's going to help them on the road this weekend at Louisville, which is a tougher opponent and a team that figures to challenge them a little bit more. But at least they've been through it, and they know that if they're in a tough spot, that they can take it to another level. And if you haven't done it before, it's a total unknown. And so I really liked the game. I thought it was great that they brought a representative opponent into Hard Rock Stadium. I thought De'Aaron King was able to get his feet wet in a big time way as the quarterback.
Oh, what a difference! School. I mean, if this was last year, and I'm not going to bash Perry because it's another year, and maybe Perry could have been better, but I think they might lose this game if King isn't.
They might have lost the game. Yeah, it was very similar to their game last year against Central Michigan, which they almost did lose.
Yeah.
And so King was great. They established 3 running backs.
By the way, how's Harris?
He's fine.
Okay.
He won't have any problems going to Louisville. And I think they found a little bit where some of their problems are. I think they were very erratic at the line of scrimmage. They've already made a change at left guard with Ja'Kai Clark coming in as the starter this week. I think they saw some, different things maybe at defensive tackle that they need to fix up a little bit. And certainly the linebackers were uneven at times. The cornerbacks were uneven at times. So they had a lot to work on in practice this week. And I think that the fact that they played a real team helped them identify some of those areas.
Yeah, and this is a game that actually was not originally scheduled before the COVID. So not only Louisville, but Clemson as well. But that's okay. It's a good road opener. And as we mentioned last week, Scott Satterfield, both coaches, second-year coaches, trying to rebuild these programs. And this is a big game in that year 2 rebuild for both coaches. I've got a very interesting trend that really doesn't work well for Miami that we'll get into a little bit later on as far as road openers. But it's a different year, and it's going to be a very exciting game because you got 2 really fun college quarterbacks, Miami with King and McCall Cunningham for Louisville.
You mentioned Scott Satterfield, and he's not a coaching name that's at the tip of the typical the football fan's tongue. I mean, he's not extremely well known throughout college football, but this guy is one of the rising offensive minds in the game. There's no question about it. He's an extremely good offensive coach, and they have the capability of putting up a lot of points. And that's why I felt it was so important that the Miami offense established itself a little bit last week. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, Greg, if this is a shootout this weekend, and maybe first to 35 or 40 wins. And
I agree.
Yeah, and Miami's going to have to score some points, but on the flip side, this guy can really dial up offense. He's got some very good skill players at Louisville. The program probably isn't as complete right now as they hope to get it back to being. Bobby Petrino kind of left the cupboard a little bit bare, certainly on defense. But they can hurt you offensively when you take those skill athletes combined with a coach that can really scheme it up. And this should be a wide open, exciting affair on Saturday night.
Yeah, matter of fact, the Cardinals in Satterfield's first year last year, they posted the top turnaround for a Power 5 team. They went from 2-10 to 8-5, and with 130 teams that normally are on the schedule going into pre-COVID with those 130 teams, the Cardinals had the number 13 ranking of returning production. So not just the
Wow.
starters, but overall production, and that includes. And we talked a little bit about some of those players last week, but that not just, of course, the quarterback, but you have the returning running back Javian Hawkins, who ran for 1,500 yards as a freshman last year, and then the receivers that we talked a little bit about last week. Smith, who had the breakout game as a sophomore, and then the two upperclassmen, Tutu Atwell and Des Fitzpatrick. So this is Louisville. Actually, on paper, when you look at it, they are a little bit deeper when it comes to explosive athletes.
Yeah, and really that's been a trademark of Louisville football. Even going back to the days when Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback there, they've always been able, for some reason, to recruit skill athletes to that school. And Tutu Atwell is a guy that really was sort of an afterthought in South Florida coming out of high school, who's gone up there and just become an absolute weapon. And I'm sure, the Hurricanes are kind of kicking themselves that they didn't recruit him a little harder, and keep him home. But yeah, he's explosive as heck. He had 1,272 yards and 12 touchdowns last season. They use him on jet sweeps quite a bit, so they don't just use him as a receiver. They try to get him the ball in the running game and just take advantage of that speed. And he just brings a level of explosion that could create a lot of problems for any defense. And I'm sure the Miami defense is spending a lot of time this week figuring out how they're going to deal with him.
Cunningham had a big week. He accounted for 4 touchdowns last week, career high 343 yards passing. And this is a team that wants to run the ball first. Matter of fact, rushing wise, if you look at the stats, they didn't run a whole lot. And that was kind of surprising. They only, 144 yards rushing last week. They averaged 212 yards rushing last year. But Western Kentucky put 8 or 9 guys in the box, and they wanted to stop the run. And I think that is the way that you have to try to beat Louisville, is to force Cunningham to throw the football. He's not his what makes him dangerous is his wheels, his ability to scramble, run, and because he actually had over almost 500 yards rushing last year and 6 touchdowns. So that's what they wanted. That's what Satterfield wants to do. He wants to run the football. But last week, Cunningham proved with those 3 receivers he could throw the football too.
Well, they got a really good outside zone running offense scheme that they like to incorporate, and they do a great job executing it. So yeah, that's their desire first. But they also came into this season, Greg, with an agenda of trying to become more balanced. And Cunningham has proven that he can throw the ball. I mean, last year he hit 62% of his passes, had 2,061 yards, 22 touchdown passes, with just 5 interceptions. So this is a guy that can get things done in the passing game. Now, there's no question that Miami will come out on Saturday night thinking, all right, we got to shut down the running game and make them throw, just like you said. No doubt about it. But pass defense for Miami is not what I would call a proven commodity right now. I thought the cornerbacks were very uneven the other night against UAB. DJ Ivey in particular really struggled. Al Blades is still trying to establish himself as a lockdown corner. Corey Couch is a young guy that has not played a lot. He had some good moments the other night and some bad moments the other night. And then this week, their 4th cornerback, Christian Williams, decided he was fed up and didn't want to wait to try to compete for a starting job, and he left the team altogether. So they've really got 3 cornerbacks that have been on the field essentially, and they're going to be forced to cover a lot of mileage on Saturday night defending that offense. And that's going to be an area to watch for Miami. Can their cornerbacks hold up under the pressure? And do they have the endurance and the conditioning at this point to hold up over 4 quarters?
And interesting, too, that out of the 4 scoring drives for Louisville last week, 4 of those drives in total averaged actually 85 or more yards. So Louisville didn't have one of these lucky games offensively where special teams or defense fed them good field position. They had 4 scoring drives or 85 or more yards. That is when your offense is humming. And the passing game definitely had a lot to do with it. And the offensive line, because the offensive line lost both starting tackles last year, both seniors gone, both players gone. Mekhi Becton, of course, gone to the New York Jets. So that meant that they have to start 2 new offensive tackles. Now they're okay in the inside at guard and at center. Everybody's back there, but they had to start a redshirt freshman at right tackle, Renato Brown, who they're very high on. Obviously, you would think so as a redshirt freshman getting the start. And Adonis Boone is the left tackle, getting his first opportunity to take over with Tyler Haycraft and Becton gone. So, and the grading as far as Louisville's offensive line, very good last week. So this was an issue for Louisville last year, a big issue. And it's only been 1 year. It's only been one game, one opponent, no Becton, but so far so good for Louisville. Now it's up to Miami.
One of the things that really impressed me was their ability to hit big plays, Greg. They had passes of 70, 63, and 48 yards in that game last week. And I know some people are going to be inclined to say, that's Western Kentucky. I think Western Kentucky is a comparable opponent to UAB.
I agree.
In a
Yeah,
sense.
sure.
They're a representative team that Louisville played, and they really dominated them other than some horrendous special teams
plays.
plays.
Yeah, it's terrible.
That made the game closer than it needed to be. But they had a 487 to 248 total yardage advantage, largely because of the big plays that they were able to hit. And Miami's going to have to avoid the big plays. I know they're going to want to shut down the run. I know they're spending a lot of time on Green Tree practice field this week, working on that zone running game that Louisville will bring to the table on Saturday night. But they need to also avoid the big plays, certainly on the road, that creates so much momentum for the home team.
And last week, Louisville's defense also did a really good job, allowing just 248 total yards. A lot of it came in the fourth quarter after the game was over. They had a transfer from Maryland, a quarterback. More of a runner, though, definitely not a king, De'Ara King. But Louisville last year led the ACC, and this is a bad led the ACC.
Yeah, they were bad.
In 31 touchdown passes allowed. So it certainly looked like that wasn't an issue in game 1, but they didn't face De'Ara King.
Well, and they gave up 6 of those touchdown passes to Jaron Williams of Miami when they came down to Hard Rock Stadium, and didn't win that. Obviously, lost that game. But they didn't feel they played very well in Miami last year, and they're looking to do better this time. And they feel they're a little bit better on defense. You talked about last year, they were just absolutely horrendous. They led over 500 yards in more than 6 games that they played last year, and they gave up 42 or more points in the final 5 games they played in the season. So this was not a good defense, going into the offseason. But they've added a few pieces. They feel that it's a little bit more solid this year than it was last year. And I think the Hurricanes are going to make them prove it on Saturday night.
And it's interesting that you bring up last year's game, because I think that's important. We know how much revenge means a lot more in college than it does in the NFL game. And when you have a young team the Petrino season was such a disaster. So it wasn't a surprise that it has taken Louisville a couple of years to kind of get going here. And then last year they get blown out by Miami. Now they're at home. It's a night game. This is a college ESPN game day game. Not that the fans are going to be able to show up for game day very much. I have no idea how it is. Actually, Kentucky's not bad, so I don't know. Maybe they'll allow a certain amount of fans, a little bit more than what we saw last week at Wake. But still, that just shows you the importance of the game.
Greg, this is so big for Miami. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this is a program trying to get respect back, a program that's, needs to be able to recruit outside of South Florida. I mean, it was exciting this offseason, commitment after commitment after commitment from South Florida. But the reality is that you can't take all 20, 25 recruits every year from Dade and Broward County. You need to be able to go outside the area. You need to be a player on the national stage if you want to be the kind of program Miami wants to be. And, right now they're not positioned for that, because of their recent struggles. But performing well in a game like this that's on prime time on ABC, that has the focal focus of game day attached to it, would be a massive step forward for Manny Diaz. And he needs something like this. I can't overstate how big this is for Miami. I mean, I asked Manny that earlier this week, and he kind of didn't want to go there. But this is a big game for him. It's a big game for Miami, and I think this is going to be one of the swing games of the season. It's like if they lose this game, I think we can pretty much deduce that Miami is going to be middle of the pack, win some, lose some once again, ACC team. If they win this game and they go to 2-0 with Florida State coming to town next, before they have to go to Clemson, at least they are establishing themselves as a program that might be on the upswing and give themselves a chance to make some noise in the ACC this year.
Yeah, this is a tough stretch. I mean, Satterfield at Louisville looking for revenge, Florida State, Clemson. You got a week off in between there, but still, that is a very tough stretch. By no means can you start 1-3 and lose 3 straight. The Clemson
Well,
game, you know
you
what's
do that, season's over.
yeah,
I mean, it's essentially over. Yeah.
you know what's more than likely going to happen in the Clemson game, so you must figure out a way to get one of these 2 wins, if not both. That's why if you lose the game, you're like in must season saving win mode against Florida State, and you don't want to put that much pressure on everybody this early in the season. But a win like this is so important, like you were mentioning with Satterfield, because yeah, maybe maybe there are a lot of just average Joes out there who don't really know the name Satterfield, and they may not think this is true, but it is. And that is, if Miami wins this game in Louisville against Satterfield, that is a respect win because Satterfield is a very good coach. There's a lot expected in Louisville. And look, they're the favorites. They're a 2.5-point favorite. And it's not that they're a 2.5-point favorite because there's going to be 60, 70,000 screaming fans in Louisville, because there's not going to be.
Right.
They're favored because, and it's a little bit, it's a small point spread, but this is a team that was just dreadful a couple of years ago, and they're the 2.5-point favorite. That's how much respect this program has already with Satterfield. That's why this would be a huge win and a very important opportunity. And I understand and I get it. Sometimes you lose and you say to yourself as a fan, well, at least they played well. And maybe that's what we'd have to say next week if they lose. But in essence, you kind of not only need to win the game, but yes, that is probably just as important as you want to see Miami take a step up. You want to see a little bit more production in the passing game from maybe one player outside of Brevin Jordan stepping up. That's something we talked about last week. Do they have, whether it's Hadley or Wiggins, do they have someone that could step up and be the number 1 wideout on this team?
I don't think so. I think it's wide receiver by committee, and they're going to have to get more out of the passing game. We talked about needing to score points, and you're not going to probably be able to do it without getting the passing game going and get your wide receivers involved. So somebody's getting. Wiggins was able to step up against these guys last year, and it might be somebody different every game, but these guys are gonna have to step up and be counted. I didn't see them getting open very easily last week. I mean, they might have missed a couple, but I didn't see a lot of separation. Wasn't surprised, but I didn't see it.
Yep.
And you would, so it's going to be interesting to see what Rhett Lashley can come up with this week in terms of passing game. I'm not sure he showed a ton last week. When the game got close in the third quarter, he kind of flipped the switch and got a couple passes in there to Brevin Jordan that helped the offense quite a bit, and then they scored those back-to-back touchdowns and kind of opened the game up a little bit. I'm not convinced he showed a ton of passing game against UAB. I think he'll show more this week. But yeah, you're not going to be able to win the way you want to try to win this year without getting production out of your wide receiver unit.
Well, they do have the advantage of tight end with Jordan, so he is going to have another big game in these big game situations. And Harris came up so big last week. It wasn't just King; it was Harris. It was the both of them, and I'm just happy to hear that Harris is fine. You got a team that has 2 players right now. You can't lose. You can't lose either one of these guys. They're so important.
No
We
doubt.
know how important King is, but Harris just demonstrated that, we talked, it's whether it's linebackers or tight ends. There's a lot of quarterbacks. There's a lot of history at Miami. There's also a lot of history at running back. And Cameron Harris did himself well last week, and he could be a big part of the game on Saturday night again.
Yeah, no doubt. And the freshman backs behind them, I thought were unbelievable.
Who did you like the better? Who'd you like the best?
I think Jalen Knighton is maybe just has a slight edge over Don Chaney, but you could put them both out there, and that's obviously huge for Miami to have depth at running back.
Yes.
But let's not kid ourselves. Cam Harris is a little older. He's got more experience. He's a little bit, he's built himself up. He's more physical right now, and yes, he is without question a very key part of the Miami offense.
All right, now let's get into our trends of the week.
Yeah, this is my favorite part. I like to hear what you've come up with here.
All right, we're gonna give.
By the way, listen, I got to give you a shout out for last week because the trends you had last week were really spot on.
They worked.
UAB against Power 5 competition.
Right.
Was not very good. They were not good against the spread, and Miami covered the spread.
Right. Road openers for Bill Clark. Again, didn't work out there, and I also think there was some positivity there from Miami as well. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of positive trends for you this week on Miami side. This is a Louisville Trend week where we have two key trends, both going up against Miami, but one of them is important for Miami. Sooner or later, if they're going to be a good program again, they have to switch these trends around, and that is Miami is just 2-8 straight up. 2-7-1 against the spread as a dog in road openers. So last 10 road openers as a dog, 2-8 straight up, including, now this is one of those weird ones, including they've lost 5 straight as a road dog opener when coming off a win of 45 or fewer points. So Miami, if they're going to take that next step at some point, they got to win road openers as dogs. Well,
but you know what? You know what, Greg? That's why I said earlier I really like the fact that they played a real team in the season opener, because those games against Bethune and FAMU were doing absolutely nothing for them, and I think that's representative. I didn't even know you were going to bring that out as a trend, but I think it's represented in that trend. You play garbage games to start your season, and it doesn't prepare you to go on the road and win. And they've been losing. And so hopefully this week, the fact that they got a real test on opening night will make them better prepared to go deal with some of the things they're going to have to deal with on Saturday.
All right. And then the trend that is a Louisville trend that Miami has to work against, Satterfield. Actually, if you take a look at Louisville now, is writing. This is actually a 3-year trend right now. I'm just going to just double check this. Yeah, just a 3-year trend now for Louisville. But wait, I'm trying to make sure this is, actually this is Scott Satterfield. So this is a Satterfield / Louisville trend, because we're going to talk also about App State. But basically, as a home favorite under Satterfield for Louisville, they are 3-0 straight up, 2-1 against the spread. So I don't want to, because I was about to confuse myself with home openers or ACC openers. But the fact is, when Louisville is at home under Scott Satterfield as a favorite, they have won all 3 games. So they're 3-0. I don't care about the spread because it's 2.5. It's really small. But the fact is you've got a couple of trends working against Miami that, with Satterfield in a very small sample size, they've won all 3 as a home favorite, whereas Miami's trying to buck the trend of just going 2-8 straight up as a dog in road openers.
Yeah, I don't feel that one applies as much to this game as the first one, but I could be wrong. It could be indicative of why Vegas has made Louisville a slight favorite, is very much because of that trend. They do look at those things. But this is a new year, new players, new everything, and new circumstances, and obviously, whenever you're home, you have an edge. But I'm not sure that trend is something that people need to be too overly concerned with. I would not be.
Okay, now I'm going to give you the best trend of the week. I saved it for last. The best trend of the week for Miami that
I can't wait for this one.
Works in their favor. Okay, and and this is really a Manny Diaz trend as far as I'm concerned, because he was only there for 1 year. This is year 2. The last year under Manny Diaz, the Hurricanes were a road dog 3 times. They covered all 3.
Really?
Yep.
All right. Well, that bodes well for them this weekend. Although
And
it's a
here are
very
the games. Okay, they
yeah.
were a 4.5-point dog at Pitt last year. They won that game. They
Yes.
were a 3-point dog at Florida State last year. They won that game. And the only game that they didn't win was actually a game that was not even considered a road game. It was a neutral game away from home, opening game against Florida. They were a 7-point dog. They didn't win the game, but they covered. So you could say away from home, 3-0 against the spread, and they've won both games as outright road dogs away from home. So Manny Diaz has proven that when he's a dog on the road, his teams can go out and get the victory.
And they're going to need that kind of performance this week. That's an interesting stat that you came up with. And, in thinking about it, really, the bad losses last year were really home games. Late, when you look at
And that's
Georgia
a psychological thing that
Virginia
happens
Tech.
to coaches, to a program, and that might be that's something you got to keep taking advantage of. Obviously, as the more good that is, because this is certainly one of those games that you want to see that trend continue.
Yeah, they'll be ready to play. There's no doubt in my mind that they're going to go up to Louisville emotionally into the game and ready to play. The question's going to be, can they hold up against Louisville's offense, and how big of a shootout is it going to get turned into? And if it turns into a major shootout, can Miami's offense get enough out of the passing game to stay with Louisville? I mean, to me, the game is that simple.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those games you get the feeling that, especially that we talked about Louisville special teams was so bad last week. It's real be real. And by the way, their kicker is a new kicker. He's a young kid. He didn't attempt a field goal last week. So we don't know if he's got the moxie to make a kick yet. So that's maybe something where Miami has another advantage. Special teams could be a big advantage for Miami, and that's the kind of that's the kind of thing that you look for in these types of games. The special teams edge, key turnovers, key penalties. Who's going to make the big play in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, no doubt. Huge edge from Miami in the kicking department and the punting department. Coverage teams and things like that, I don't think we really know yet. That'll be to be determined. But that is an area where Miami clearly is going to go into the game looking to find some hidden yards and capitalize on what they're going to feel is an advantage on special teams, without question.
All right, Gary. So Florida State, boy, it's coming up already. Florida State.
Yeah, but we gotta get through this one first, Greg. we got time to worry about Florida State.
That's next week's show.
This is a big game for Miami. It really, really is, and hopefully they go up there and represent themselves well.
That would be nice, yeah. And look, I'll tell you right now, they have as good as an exciting quarterback Cunningham is. King's better. And this is what you want from your quarterback. It's a quarterback sport. You want your quarterback now a game under his belt to go into that environment. And look, he wanted to be here. He loved the history. Well, to be a part of that history, this is what it's about. Go on the road in a game you can win and get it done.
Well, he's got to prove he's better, Greg. I mean, you just said he's better by default, but he's got to prove he's better. Cunningham has been very effective at Louisville, and this is the Eric King's second game at Miami. He's going to have to be able to do it in the passing game as well as running around, in my opinion.
All right. So again, as Gary said, next week is Florida State, and then we'll wrap up this game and talk about all the key stats and key plays and so forth, and hopefully it'll be a Miami win again. And then it's on to Florida State. So, Gary, appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Take care, Gary.
Bye-bye.